Yo, what up, YouTube? We got a new reaction video. I just saw this, and I'm like, yo, this would be a good reaction, dog. I got why the UFC is basically a cartel, yo. Fucking cartel, nigga. Damn. Let's get to it.
We all know the UFC underpays fighters, especially starting
Yes.
contracts on 10,000 to show, 10,000 to win. But have you ever
Here's, huh.
really asked yourself why? Maybe they just don't have enough money.
10K seems small, though, for all the beatings you're getting, bro. And if you lose out on 10K. So how many fights you gotta do a year? Because those are brutal fights, fam.
For example, at UFC 306, the worst floor seat cost was $12,000. One seat,
A seat.
$12,000. That means one chair was worth more than a fighter who showed up, fought, and lost. So why is this happening? One short, one long. The short answer, they don't need to pay more. The long answer, let's break it down. In the 2000s, MMA wasn't just the UFC. There was real competition like Pride in Japan, Strikeforce in the US, WEC, or Elite XC. If you were a fighter back then, you had options. And because you
Hmm.
had options, the UFC had to pay more. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't a monopoly. But instead of fighting competition, they did what billionaires always do. They bought the competition. Pride bought and shut down. Strikeforce bought and absorbed.
Damn.
WEC gone. Elite XC collapsed. And the UFC picked up the pieces. One
Wait,
by
so
one,
there's nothing else like UFC then, eh?
the options disappeared. And when the dust settled, only Bellator was left standing. At first, Bellator was a solid competitor. They picked up whatever the UFC didn't want anymore, like Rampage Jackson and Chael Sonnen. They had few solid names like Are You Not Entertained?
Are you not entertained?
Patricio Pitbull, Michael Venom Page, Douglas Lima, Shlemenko, and others. Bellator wasn't the UFC, but it was real. It kept some pressure on the system.
Hmm.
Until it didn't. Over time, Bellator fell apart. Bad business,
Oh,
bad matchmaking,
wait,
bad until it didn't.
what?
Over time,
Average Bellator event crowd? Bro, there's like 15 people in there.
Bellator fell apart. Bad business, bad matchmaking, bad leadership. And while Bellator crumbled, the UFC kept rising. The
Hmm.
2010s were the years of McGregor. Massive fights, massive pay-per-views. By the
Those were crazy.
mid-2010s, the UFC wasn't just the biggest promotion. It was the fight game. Everything else, just leftovers. Once the competition was gone, everything changed. The UFC didn't have to fight for talent anymore. They owned the talent. If you were a fighter, you had two choices: sign with the UFC or fade into obscurity. Bellator tried to compete for a while, but it never reached the same level. And now, Bellator is gone too, bought by the PFL, another so-called option off the table. The
Hmm.
UFC became the gatekeeper to fame, to money, to legacy. And
I've
when you
seen so many fighters complain about the UFC. How they just literally don't get paid anything. And they're like, what's it called? The benefits and shit like that is garbage for how much beatings they're taking, bro. Unless you're the top guys like McGregor and all of them.
control everything, you control the prices too. Now, yes, if you're a big name, you're probably getting paid. Adesanya, John Jones, or
Yeah,
Paddy Pimblett, you're
exactly.
bringing eyeballs, you're moving numbers, you're valuable. And for those guys, the UFC cuts bigger checks, as they should. But for the rest, for the guys trying to break through, the starting pay is the same garbage it's been for over a decade. 10 and 10, since at least 2010. And the $50,000 bonus, same as it was back in the Brock Lesnar days. Meanwhile, the UFC's business exploded. The pay-per-view prices went up, the gate numbers tripled, and Dana White can't stop talking about how he's breaking all the gate records.
The gate was
Damn.
11.5 million. UFC now holds the number 1, 2, and 3 highest gate record of all time at the Kaseya Center.
The UFC is making 10 times what they were in 2010. But
Wow.
fighters at the bottom, they're stuck at 10 and 10. Maybe you can live with the fact that the UFC is a business first. But the one thing that shouldn't slip through the cracks is the starting contract. 10 plus 10 is disgusting. It's criminal. Let's do the math. You
Exactly.
fight for 10 and 10. You lose. You only get 10. You pay taxes. Now you're at 7. You pay your trainer and your manager. You're left with 4, maybe 5. $4,000 for months of training. Weight cuts, brain damage. Honestly, it's literally better to beg on the street than to lose a UFC fight. It's not just about
Facts.
low pay, it's about control. The UFC controls everything: who you fight, when you fight, what you get paid, and what sponsors you're allowed to have. You want
Hmm.
to wear your own sponsor in the cage? Nope. Only UFC approved logos. And guess who gets the check? Not you. Remember when fighters could earn
Damn.
real sponsor money? 5 figures, 6 figures. Now they get a tiered bonus based on how many UFC fights they've had. And it's not just sponsors. The UFC controls pay-per-view money too. You'd think if you're a champion, you got, let's say, $2 per pay-per-view buy, and your fight sells 1 million pay-per-views, $2 million, right? Nope. Here's how it actually works. From 0 to 500,000 buys, you only get $1 per buy. From 500,000 to 750,000, you get $1.50. Only after that, from 750 to 1 million, you get $2 per buy. So instead of getting
Pay-per-view?
$2 million, you get $1,375,000. So even if you sell out the arena, you're still getting scaled percentages like it's a phone data plan. And here's the thing,
Damn.
you can't complain, you can't speak out, because if you do,
There's
you
nowhere
might
else to
never get
go.
booked again.
Yeah, Francis got cooked, no? I saw that. He wanted to have a sponsor or some shit like that. Dana was like, fuck you, nigga.
This isn't just about fighter pay, or sponsorships, or contracts. It's about how the business is structured. The UFC isn't just a fight promotion, it's the center of the MMA world. Now, if you want to be seen as the best, you fight in the UFC. Simple as that. The UFC decides who gets signed, who gets pushed, who gets paid. You don't negotiate like a free agent. You accept
Hmm.
what's on the table or you don't fight. And most fighters can't afford to walk away because there's nowhere else to go. That's just what happens when one company becomes the market. The UFC built that dominance. They earned it, but it also means they don't have to share much.
Today, I'm working with Tops and giving away a prize pack
Yeah,
of
bro,
trade.
there's probably never gonna be another company or fighting company like the UFC who could compete with the UFC, because nigga, they got the world on lock, bro. On lock with that full martial arts fighting shit. It's crazy, bro. On Netflix, they're on everything, cuz.
Trading cards worth over $5,000.
Maybe this is just how the fight business works.
If you don't like it, there's a simple solution to this problem. Go start your own MMA organization, no barrier to entry, knock yourself out, pay them whatever you want to pay them.
But if you're a fighter entering that system, you should know exactly what you're signing up for.
Good video, y'all. Fuck that video. Fuck that video. Appreciate y'all for watching. Tune into the next video. Peace.